Today, we are joined by Michelle McGann, the founder and CEO of Tier 1 PCS, a military spouse owned relocation referral network that helps service members and their families navigate one of the most stressful parts of military life, moving. Through Tier 1 PCS, Michelle connects families with top vetted realtors, lenders, and home inspectors across the country. Her mission is simple but powerful to make each PCS move easier, more transparent, and more rewarding. And we all know how crazy the process of moving can be. As a proud Army spouse, mom of three, and passionate advocate for the military community, Michelle has turned her personal experience with countless moves into a business built on service, trust, and purpose. Michelle, welcome to More Than a Mill Spouse. Since we are on the topic of moving, and it's often something we dread, let's start out today. Just tell me something. What is something you love about moving?
Something I love about moving. I do typically love the scrolling on the Zillow piece. I like looking at those homes, even the ones that maybe are a stretch, right? But I'm like, ooh, and the daydreaming and the creating the lists of like the bucket list, of like, well, what are we going to do there? Really trying to be more positive on it because there's a lot of hard that comes with those moves, especially as a mom. And so finding those like fun spots that we can go to, the new Mexican restaurant, the new pizza place, when you got little kids, you're not going to a lot of fancy dinners,
Right.
but trying to find those spots and, what neighborhood is going to be like and kind of daydreaming, if you will, on that part of the move.
I love it, especially the Zillow piece. Even when we are not getting ready to move, it's just like, okay, what do you want to do tonight? Let's go scroll on Zillow. And we just go
Yeah.
look through. We have tabs for all these different areas of the country. We're like, okay, what part of the country do you want to look at tonight?
Yes. Even like now that we're settled in a town, I still pull up Zillow here and I'm like, whose house around me is for sale? Let's look at it. Because I just like to see it and I like the house shopping phase. It's fun.
Yes. And Zillow makes things way more easier and fun to like just scroll around and look. Okay,
Yeah.
so we are going to be talking about moving, but before we go there, let's just go back and I would love for you to share a little bit about your story and what your introduction to military life looks like.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So I met my husband out of college. He was already active duty for like 2 years, I want to say. So he was already in this. We went on a couple dates. I was like, I don't want this life. And I think here that's a lot of us out there. We find our one day spouse and we're like, yeah, I don't know. I don't want this. And over time, we just really kind of hit it off. And I was like, oh man, I guess this is what we're doing. And he was in the 82nd at the time, and we dated maybe for 8 months. He went on a 9-month deployment. We got married when he got home. I mean, it is very typical, like military esque. That is our start. And so we were at Bragg for a long time. We PCS from there. We've ended up back at Fort Bragg again. But in those years, he's been in for 12 years now. We've been together for a decade. We've done the moves, even at the same base. We've bought houses and moved around where we were. We've had 3 kids. We've had the good of the military side, but there's a lot of hard in that, especially if you're in a high op tempo unit, like your husband is. And so we've done the, 2 days notice on an 8-month deployment. And we've done all that stuff, countless days in the field. And, are you going to be home for this? Are you going to be home for that? Are you coming home for dinner tonight? All of those things in it. And so, not to say that there's not any good in it, because there's a lot of hard, but there's so much good. And we've lived both in very saturated military towns like Fort Bragg and then towns that are not. And I will say, like, if you look at like our people and like our tribe, even in a non-military town, we seek out our military people because I think we just have a different like understanding of each other and life, and it's just been fun. So we've had hard times, we've had good times. But yeah, so intro to military life though, I was like, holy crap, what is this? I had a career at the time. I worked for Invisalign and it was great. And I think that helped me with my identity at the time because I had something that was mine. And then when we moved and I had to leave that job because I wasn't going to be near the office anymore, that piece was tough because I was like, whoa, that was mine. And now
Yeah.
what's mine? And we had a little one. I was pregnant. It's just like It was a lot. And that part of the military life is hard. And I hear it from, I've got a really good friend here now, and she's her first year into the military because her husband did like med school and everything. And now they're here. And she's like, Michelle, I was like, it's normal. I was like, you just got to find your people. You got to find your hobby, like whatever it is that makes you happy, like find it and stick with it because it is hard sometimes because like in a military town, it is your spouse's job that brings you there. It is a lot of times his coworkers and their wives that you're with, and everything kind of centers around them. And it's like, whoa, where's me in this? And so that part I think is probably one of the hardest parts outside of the moving about military life is like, well, where do I fit into this? Like, I love my husband, but what about me?
I mean, your story is so typical of so many military
Yes.
families and trying to navigate this journey of putting my own dreams, my passions on the back burner and then saying, okay, like, but what about me? Like, what's mine? Like, how do I find purpose in the midst of this lifestyle? There is an understanding when you become a part of the military community, you're going to face so many crazy challenges that a lot of people don't even understand what that's like. But
Yeah.
when you can get around people that do understand what it's like to live that lifestyle and to say, yes, it's normal to go through this and to feel all of these feelings, binds you together in a very unique way. And we're able to support each other through that. And those bonds become even stronger because of what you've walked through together.
Yeah, absolutely. Even if you only have a year with them, they're family, you're like,
Hmm.
"Oh, I'll just cling on to you, even if it's just for a year."
So talk about your journey of recognizing, okay, I want something that's my own, but we're moving and I'm having to give up a job I love. What did that look like for you to try to find your own thing?
Yeah, so it's a little wild of a story. So we were selling our house in Fayetteville when we were PCSing. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do when we get to our next duty station. I was really in the air. Being pregnant is not a great time to enter the job market. So I was like, I might just have to wait. And I was like, I don't know what to do. And then we started selling this house and we loved our listing agent. She was fantastic. The buyer's agent was a little, not sure what was going on there. And it started kind of spinning those wheels of like, what is taking place here? And, what's going on? And long story short, she was signing counteroffers for her client without letting them know. And we found this out. And I remember looking at my husband that night and I was like, I think I could go into real estate. And he's like, Michelle, he was like, "Really? Like, you have a great corporate career, like, you will find another job, like, that's not guaranteed income." Like, and I'm like, "No, like, this is happening to another military family." Like, the people buying our house were military, they were coming from California, and I was like, and they had no idea that this was taking place, like, this can't be uncommon, like, this isn't the only time that this is taking place, like, we're not that unique. And so I started thinking about it, and I sure enough, the next morning, mind you, signed up for the real estate course online. And I was like, I'm just gonna do it. I'm like, what? Why not? And my husband's like looking at me with six heads. He's like, okay, like I'm gonna rally behind you, but what are we getting ourselves into? And I decided that that's what I was going to do. And I got to Williamsburg and I was like, let's just give it a year. Let's see how this goes for a year. And if it's not my passion and we don't end up sticking with it, that's fine. But it was really that experience that we went through, and then looking back, other experiences we had had when buying or selling that kind of started those little flames of like what could take place. And I was like, I want to do this because I want to protect other military families out there. I would never in a million years try to sign something for clients without them knowing. I'm like, that's crazy. But it's also the transparency. And I think, all of us military families, when we're buying sight unseen, it is very stressful. We look at that and we're like, holy crap, I really hope they're being honest about this house. I really hope they're showing me every corner. I hope it doesn't smell like cat pee. Like all of these things, right? And so I went into it with that mindset of like, I've been there. I've had to buy the house sight unseen. How do I go through this with other families as almost part of their family? Let me show you everything. And I remember finding a house. I had looked at like 20 houses for this family. So sweet. And they were like, "What do you think?" And I'm like, "I would never buy it." was like, I would never buy it. I was like, please don't buy this house. Like, it has too much going on. And they were like, oh, okay. I'm like, no, I'm trying to be honest with you. I was like, I hate to say that to somebody, but at the same time, like, I wouldn't want a realtor on the other side of this, like, just like showing me the house. And then when I'm like, what do you think? And they're like, oh, yeah, it looks great. Like, no, 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 be honest with me. And that's kind of where I started to find that passion. And it was the education piece behind it that I loved because I was doing that for Invisalign. So I got to kind of pull that into this too, educating people on, hey, this is the home buying process. You know, if you're a first time VA buyer, you know nothing. But I also started learning that some of my other clients that they were on their ninth move, 9 houses in, they didn't know anything either because they had never been told before. And then as you start to get into the process, every state has different rules and different laws in place. So it's like kind of explaining that piece to them. And so I really enjoyed it, but then kind of had this heartbreak of hearing my clients' stories from previous moves of, wow, the industry, like we are failing our families. And that's where my passion really came into play.
I think your story is so powerful because number one, I don't think we give enough credit to how hard it is just to find a job in general when you
Yeah.
move. But if you are pregnant when you move and you are trying to find an employer willing to hire you, and the truth is, you may not qualify for maternity leave. I didn't because I moved when I was pregnant, and I was like,
Mhm.
okay, this is going to change my plans of how I was going to build a career. It really forces you to think outside the box, which is exactly what you did. And I love how quick you were to have this idea and then immediately to take action on it. You signed up the next day
Yes.
to start training, which
Thankfully,
is
it worked out.
yeah, because sometimes we just like sit on an idea for a long period of time, but you actually took action on it and then you gave yourself a timeline and said, hey, I'm going to give this a year. I'm going to try it out and see if this is a good fit and we'll go from there. And obviously, you fell in love with it and you've been able to build off of that to build on the skills that you took from previous jobs and say, okay, how can I bring that into what I'm doing now and how can I really tap into what I'm passionate about and how I can help other people through the process. So you started out just doing real estate. How did it turn into tier one PCS?
Oh my goodness. So another move was involved in that. But before that, you know, hearing my clients' stories over and over again of what had failed in their previous transactions. And I was just kind of feeling beat up over it. You know, I had a client, I was selling their house and the buyers did a home inspection and there was problems in the crawl space. And I presented that to them. They're like, no, 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 we had this fixed when we moved in. Here's the signed paperwork for when we bought the house saying it was fixed. And I was like, I can't believe I have to tell you this. It wasn't fixed. Like somebody was not honest with you. And I'm so sorry, but now you have to fix it. And it was stories like that where you're like, man, these people were going to really make money off of this move and they were going to be financially in such a good spot. But then they were done wrong when they bought the house. And now they're not going to walk away with what they thought. And you kind of feel like the bearer of bad news, you know? And so I started at that time jotting notes to myself, and it wasn't tier one PCS. It was a blank sheet of paper with no name. And I was like, how do I find people like me? We're out there. There are some incredible realtors, lenders, home inspectors out there. And sometimes they get kind of bogged down in the white noise or the Facebook groups or whatever it may be of other people being recommended over and over. But it's like, we're out there. So how do I find them? And so I started really small and I would just, when my clients were getting ready to move, they say, hey, we're selling, we're gonna be moving. I'm like, well, where are you going? And they would tell me, I'm like, would you mind if I interviewed some agents for you? Because I, as an agent, kind of know what to ask now. I kind of know the process. I know how to find somebody who actually knows what they're doing. And what if I presented those two options to you and then you pick who you think out of those? And I was like, and if you don't like either one, no harm, no foul, find your own. I said, but would you let me try it? And so I started that way. And I was like, oh, and then story after story, they're like, Michelle, this was fantastic. This was such an easy move. And I'm like, huh, okay, I think I'm onto something here. And, you know, as this is all building, my husband gets orders. We've never had like notice on orders. I feel like we always fall into that, like, you've got 2 months, good luck. And so we kind of fell into that again. I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm not licensed as an agent in this next state. Like, maybe this is just my opportunity to take what I've been doing and scale it. And so that's exactly what I did, and then, wound up pregnant again. So it's like moves and pregnancy just seem to go hand in hand in this household. And I was like, how do I find them? So I started interviewing across the country. I started with some of the bigger bases, some of the higher traffic PCS locations, and I would interview agents. I would find one or two at a base, and I'm like, okay, these are great people, like amazing quality. They're high on education. They'll send me how they do sight unseen buyers. So I can actually see, like, okay, you are really showing them everything. And they'll send me the education documents. And then from there, like, okay, what about the lending piece? Because I think as military families, a lot of times, and I see it every day, people are like, oh, I went to Navy Fed or I went here. I'm like, great options, but let's find you somebody who's going to take care of you, maybe a lower rate, less down payment, might have some grant money. Like, let's see what we can do here to really financially help you, but also somebody that's going to sit down and explain the VA loan to you. And hey, do you have options? We had a family this year, they're dual military, they moved, they had never used their wife's VA loan. Well, we know if you keep using your VA loan, that every time you use it, you usually pay a little bit more for using your VA loan. And so the lender goes, wait, 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 you've never used your wife's VA loan and you're about to move to a much more expensive base and area. Why don't we use your wife's this time? And then you won't have to pay a lot of that closing cost fee. And they're like, why has no one ever told us this before? So it's stuff like that where it's lenders that are really going to peek under the curtain, kind of help you out, lay out your options. We actually personally one time didn't use our VA loan because where we were moving, it just didn't make sense. And we didn't even think about that until a lender explained it to us. And I was like, huh, you're onto something here. And so I expanded it to lenders and started interviewing lenders and making sure that the lenders were within that state because we know that they need to know the landscape. Do they need flood insurance? All of these things that are so important. And then I was like, oh, okay, how about home inspectors? And so we're really trying to get into that space now too, because I will argue that home inspectors are probably one of the most important people in your transaction. Like they can save you so much money or help you avoid a mistake if they're quality and they're not just looking out for the realtor's commission, but they're looking out for you. And that they're going to walk you through everything about that house and kind of lay it all out for you. So you know when you move in, hey, these are the little things, but here are the big things about this house that are a problem. And so we've recently started growing into that space of finding home inspectors. And I review their home inspection reports and I look at them and say, okay, is this easy and clear to read? If I knew nothing about a house, would I understand this report? Are they pointing out major things? Are they pointing out little things too that maybe it's somebody who just wants a big checklist of all the little things they need to do when they move into the house and all of that information. And then on top of that, we make sure everybody is somewhat military affiliated. So all of our realtors are either veterans or military spouses themselves. All of our lenders, I think all but two are veterans or military spouses. The other two are like military brats. But when they're not firsthand military affiliated, they have to do at least 50% VA loans. So they have to prove to me that that is the bulk of their business and that they truly do understand it. And then on the home inspector side, those are all truly military affiliated across the board as well. So these are also people who've lived this life, they understand it, they're going to take care of our people. And so that's kind of how Tier 1 PCS came to be and how we truly believe in taking these military families and kind of holding them in our hand and saying, hey, moving sucks no matter what. Like it's not a fun process, but let's hold this stress piece for you and make sure you get to the other end without a major hiccup. Let's get you into a house on the right time. Let's make sure the house isn't falling apart when you get there. You have what you need and kind of take that burden off your shoulders.
I mean, first of all, I just love how you faced another obstacle and then you turned it into an opportunity. Hey, I'm moving. I don't have a license in this state. What can I do differently this time? And to really follow those steps of like, let me explore this, let me see where this leads, and it takes the next step and the next step until you've created all that you have right now, which is so exciting. So what I would love is for you just to take a military family and kind of walk through. Like you said, sometimes you only have a couple months notice that hey, you got to pick up and move across the country and that feels overwhelming, especially on a tight timeline. So, can you talk us through some of the first steps a family can take?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, you know, finding somebody on the other end that's going to hold your hand, right? So finding that realtor and lender team. So if you're looking at buying a house, you know, if you're not and you're looking for a property manager for renting, that's great too. And that's something that we are working on trying to connect families with. But let's just say you're going to buy at this next duty station. So getting that lender and realtor team as soon as possible. So I've heard people are like, well, we don't have hard orders yet. And I'm like, let's at least get the team in play ready to go. I wouldn't write on anything yet, but let's at least have that team that's starting to kind of scout things out, tell you about the area, help you explain maybe what neighborhoods to look at, what areas to look at, you know, what schools you might be interested in. Let's have them working for you already. Because people are like, oh, I don't have hard orders. Like, but you might not get them until 30 days out. And then you're, you know, a whole nother month behind. And so looking for those people. And so, you know, the families that are coming through our site, a lot of times, if there's multiple options for a realtor and lender, we'll say, hey, have you picked one yet? If not, why don't you talk to both of them? Because personality is a huge play on this too, right? And I'm not blind to that. So I know that both of them are great options, but are they both great options for you? And so it's like, why don't you talk to them, see how they both kind of work, and then let me know and let's get them working, you know? And our realtors on the other side of this, they know not to have you write on something yet because you don't have hard orders, but they can at least show you the homes, get it going because most of the time that first house you see is not the house that's gonna, you know, the one you move in. And so that's really the first key step, getting your paperwork into the lender so that you can find out how much you're approved for, what you can purchase, and then understanding that. And that's another piece that I tell clients all the time is, hey, you might be approved for, let's say, $400,000. Is that in your family's budget though? Is that what is comfortable for you if your monthly payment looks like X? And that's what our lenders on our side are trained to do. They're going to say, hey, what are you hoping to spend a month? And then let me show you what that looks like from a mortgage perspective. Because a lot of us are on budgets and we are very cognizant of our spend. Sometimes that's staying within, you know, BAH. And sometimes, you know, maybe it's dual income and you're blessed with a little bit more money to spend a little bit more. But it's, you know, what is that money? Is it $2,000 a month? Okay, well, this is what that looks like in a mortgage. So let's say somewhere in there. And I think that piece is really critical because, as we said in the beginning, going on Zillow is so fun, but you don't always know, like, hey, what does that $4,000 break down to in a mortgage for the local taxes, or if there's HOAs involved, or what does that actually look like? And so while it's fun to scroll, it's like, okay, let me find out what I should be scrolling for. And so that to me would be number one biggest step, is to do that if you're looking to purchase on the flip end. And then kind of letting everything else fall into play, right? So you're going to be looking for a lender to sell your house if you have one too, or I'm sorry, a realtor to sell your house too if you're in one. And you know, our realtors on our team they know this and they'll work with each other. Like, hey, what's their timeline? Okay, what are houses typically selling? Like, how many days on market in your area? And so how do we piece this together in buying this house and selling this house so that they don't owe anything out of pocket, they get the cash, they can move it, their VA entitlements restored, all of these pieces that they can work together to do on the back end that you're not having to communicate. You're out of it. They're just like, hey, give me that other realtor's number. Who are they? Let us handle that side of it for you. And you focus on, you know, getting the house ready for the movers, you know, your little room that they can't go into. And you get to focus on that while they're working everything out on the back end, which I think people really don't understand like how much that really is off their shoulders until they experience it and they're like, oh wow, that was nice, that was good, okay, they handled it, they got all those pieces for me and I just had to sit here and wait and get everything ready for the movers. And I think that is so important.
Yeah, the whole moving process can be
Mhm.
daunting. And if you are trying to buy a house, or if it's your first time to buy a house, or if you're trying to buy a house sight unseen, all of that is overwhelming sometimes. I really like what you talked about, the budget and figuring out what is your monthly payment going to actually look like. Because we had the scenario where I was like, oh, the price of the home, like it's a good price, like it's a good, in my mind, a great monthly payment, until we realized what the property taxes in the local area actually were. And I was like, oh, this makes a huge difference on what my monthly payment actually is. So that's really, really important. What is something that surprises a lot of families that you work with or that you wish families knew, but they don't always know?
Man, there's so much. It's sometimes hard to like look that way because I'm so ingrained in this all the time. So I think one of the biggest pieces is who your realtor is truly matters in multiple facets, right? So I was just explaining this to a client the other day. They're like, "Hey, we saw this person on Facebook and it happened to be in an area that I know very well that I have access to the MLS, so I'm a little spoiled when I could help this client out." But it was a great explanation, and they're like, well, we're looking at this person, our friend recommended them, and do you have somebody else we could interview? I'm like, great. I'm like, would you mind telling me who that other person is? I just, for your sake, would love to see what they're actually doing in the market. And so I pulled them up and I was like, I don't know if it matters to you. I said in the last 365 days they've only sold 4 homes. I said, now let's look at a deeper picture of that, because maybe there were things going on in their life, maybe they're still fantastic. Let's see if they're getting their buyers money at closing, because I can also see that in the lens I was looking at. And I was like, I know that market really well. And sellers are paying money right now. So they're not getting a lot of money. I think one house they got $3. And I was like, $3? I was like, come on, come on. And so I was like, let me show you this other person. And I said, just give them a chance, interview them, because they have sold, I think it was like 36 homes in 1 year. They're getting 10,000 plus dollars on every transaction for their buyers. I was like, it truly matters. I was like, not only do they need to be a fantastic realtor, but they also have to be liked by other realtors, because as I've learned from being a realtor, is that sometimes unfortunately, it happens where people will sway their clients towards another buyer or seller based on who their realtor is, because they know that working with that realtor is a smooth transaction and it will get to closing. And so I don't think a lot of people on the outside realize that, where they're like, huh, no, that was like, my friend recommended them. They said they had a great experience. I was like, okay, but what was their experience? Did they have an easy move? Were they just looking at that one house? So much goes into play. And so that's my biggest piece of advice is, really interview these people that you're working with and make sure you understand them. Make sure you know how they operate. Is it how you operate? Are they pick up the phone and call you people, but you might not be a pick up the phone and talk person. Maybe you're like, hey, just send me a text. I've got a newborn and I can't be on the phone all the time, but a text is great. But maybe they don't like texting. And you see that a lot. There's nothing wrong with them as a realtor, but their ways just don't match with yours. And so I think that's my biggest piece of advice is like, hey, interview these people, make sure you know who you're working with, know what transactions they're doing, what's the market like, and are they really representing their clients well? Because they're representing you because you're not there. And that's so critically important.
This is such a good tip because we made this exact mistake when we were first married. Our first home, we get orders to move, and we just use the realtor that USA recommends to us. And she did not put any effort at all into selling our home. And I got to this point where I was like, I think I could do this better than she can because she is not doing anything to
Yeah.
help sell this home. So we made that mistake. We paid the price. We ended up not being able to sell it because of the market, and we had to hold on to it for a lot longer than we intended. So, interviewing is something that I can definitely recommend. Don't do what I did.
I know.
Interview realtors.
And it's so sad because you just don't know, like you guys had no clue that that person maybe wasn't the best option for you. And you're not alone in that. I hear it every day where it's like, oh, just like, or, we didn't realize we were going to be stuck with a mortgage and now we're PCSing and now we've got to pay rent, or we're moving on base because we have this mortgage. And now you've got a whole nother, couple $1,000s that you're spilling in somewhere you're not even living. So yeah, I see it every day, and it's heartbreaking because you just want to be like, oh, I would have helped you. I would have helped you.
So I do have to ask, switching gears a little bit, but you are building this business as an active duty military spouse with 3 young kids at home. So, can you just talk about? We have so many listeners that are trying to find their own thing in the midst of military life, and it can be challenging. So, what are some of the things that you have found that work for you as a military spouse and as a mom and as an entrepreneur?
Caffeine. Honestly, I think I had to, especially adding kids into the mix, I had to reset my expectations of myself and my timelines. And even when I was building this business, my attorney was like, "Hey, you wanted to launch like 6 months ago." I'm like, I'm just not there. Like I was pregnant and I had a lot personally going on with my mom was sick. And I was like, I couldn't do it. And it wasn't worth stressing myself out to the point of throwing my hands in the air and saying, like, I can't do this because I so wanted it. And I was like, we're just going to do bits and pieces at a time. And so, what I would do is on a Sunday evening, I would say, okay, what is realistic for me to accomplish this week? It might not get me to my launch date of what I wanted to launch, but it will get me to launching. And so I would just do bits and pieces every week. I would say, hey, this week, I might have 20 professionals that want an interview to be in our network, but I can't have 20 interviews this week. So I'm going to do 5 and I'm going to do one a day so that I can tackle this during nap time a lot of the time or in between school pickup or like on the way to school pickup in car line. I was like, how can I piece all this together to make sense? Still be the present mom that I wanted to be because I think that's so important for a lot of us when, maybe, mom or dad, whoever's active duty, is gone a lot. It's like, hey, we want to make sure at least one parent is here actively giving these children everything that they need. And so it was kind of piecing that together and then just realizing, like, hey, on Tuesday and Thursday nights, I'm just going to work late that night. Kids are going to go to bed. I'm going to pull out my computer. Can I do that 5 days a week? No, because I still need sleep to operate. And so those expectations resetting for me, especially like if you're super type A and super high driven, it was a little hard at first. I was like, oh, I just want to do this. I want to get it done. But sticking to this, like, hey, what's realistic so I don't burn out? Because I want this business to succeed. I want to help so many families. What can I actually do? And then it was, hey, let's not forget that I still want to enjoy this season of my life. Let me go get lunch with a friend or go join a play date so that I can still be there and talk to my friends and have that piece of me, but still get this business to succeed. And so it's a lot of juggling. I think we throw like, you see the pictures of somebody juggling 3 balls, and I kind of chuckle because I'm like, I think I have like 6 balls in the air and like 3 of them are on fire. But it's like, how do you keep them in the air? But how do you also realize, like, hey, we're humans? Like, they might say that military spouses are super resilient and strong, and we are, but we all have a breaking point somewhere in there. And it's like, how do we steer clear of that? And so, yeah, for me, it was just like, let's just take chunks of this at a time and let's tackle what we can. And, somebody else might be able to do way more that day than I can. But did I get to, sit down and eat dinner with my kids? Like, hey, that's truly winning in my book at the end of the day.
Absolutely. We don't want to get to that place where we are burned out and unable to do the thing that is going to help so many other people. It's really about resetting those expectations because the moment that we start comparing ourselves to the progress that someone else is making or the timeline that they're on, that gets us to the cycle of negative thinking and derailing us from our progress, our journey. And it's really saying, okay, number one, what do I want my life to look and feel like? Like you said, I want to be able to enjoy my life. I want to be present for my kids. And then what is realistic for me every day? And so that progress, it takes attention and energy and reminding myself that, like, okay, all you can do is what you can do in the time that you have. But really saying, okay, what is realistic for my life in this season?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important, like you mentioned, not comparing. I have a friend here, she has 2 under 2 right now. And she's like, man, I don't know how you even get out of the house some days. And I'm like, you know what? I was there. You cannot compare what your season right now. My oldest is almost 6. I'm like, when she was 21 months and I had a newborn, man, it was a feat to get out of the house. And I went through my phone and showed her a picture that my husband sat one day. I'm holding the newborn, I'm holding the toddler, and they're both like wailing, crying. And I'm like, this, like, I was there too. Like, you can't compare. I was like, you will come out of this and like, you're going to have those seasons again that you're like, huh, I can breathe for a second. But it's so important to not compare because we're away from a lot of the friends that we've met or family. Like, we get on social media to keep up with people. And I think that's such a great piece of the social media aspect. But then you look at like the reels and you're like, man, that person is just doing it all. And I'm like, if you looked at my Instagram, it would look like I had my head on straight too. Meanwhile, my kids are running around crazy. Things are, I'm like, luckily the house isn't on fire. but it's like you just can't look at that as like, hey, they've got it all together. So yeah, the comparison can be really hard, especially for military spouses out there who they really want that career aspect or they really want to have a business and like it takes a lot of work and they know that and they're driven and they can do it. But it's like, hey, it's gonna come in waves. Like you're gonna get there, but it can't be overnight. I'm like, we just can't. Our spouses aren't home all the time to help support
Hmm.
that, to take on bedtime so we can go back to the computer and work. Like we really do it all of the time. And that's amazing. But also like, hey, watch out for your own mental health and like take a breather and like you'll get there. Just breathe.
Yes. And just pay
Mhm.
attention to the season that you're in because, like you said, it comes in seasons. And there are seasons where you're able to be more productive and seasons where you just move at a slower pace. So I would love to end today by just letting you talk about this dream that you're building for all of the families that you want to help. So tell us what your big dream is.
Oh man, I have so many dreams. I really want to be that go to for military families. Like, hey, we've got orders. Let's go to tier one PCS. So, because we know that they're going to help us. And while I know it'll be time before we're built out and we have realtors everywhere, we're getting there. But like, that's my ultimate dream is like, hey, let's make sure that you don't have a situation that maybe you had when you were selling your house or what I had when I was selling my house. And my clients have had. It's like, I want to make sure that like that's not your experience, that you can really just like have that positive experience. And then, hey, maybe on the back end, you're like, wow, that was a great transaction for us. We're actually going to hang on to that house now, make some money off of it. Let's go buy another one and really be able to be educated on all of your options and just I don't know. I just want to be like that mom that just like hugs all of our families and like, hey, I'm gonna take care of you, like I promise. And hey, at Tier One BCS, like we give money back at closing too. Like it's totally free for service members to like to come to us and then you're getting a check at closing and it's like wow, how great is that? Like maybe that's a new bedroom set that you wanted in your bedroom when you moved or the movers broke a TV. We've all been there. And so it's just like, hey, how can I just squeeze you all and get you to the next place in a good positive light?
I love that. So let everybody know, how can they connect with you and find out more about how Tier 1 PCS can help them?
Yeah, absolutely. So our website is fantastic. That's kind of where we can get connected and you can fill in your information and we'll kind of tag team to get you to the right place. So it's tier1pcs.com. We're also on Instagram at tier.1.pcs. And so I try to post helpful information, if there's things out there in the news that come up, especially when we weren't sure if we were getting paid for a while. I was kind of posting tidbits of like, hey, this is what you can do. So I'm really trying to be that educational source too of like, hey, not just getting you to the professionals, but like what is going on in the world that could be affecting you right now as a military family and buying or selling and moving, and let's make sure you know what's going on because it's hard to know everything. We're very informed people, but we cannot know everything, and so that's a great source of information a lot of times on our Instagram.
Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your expertise with us and talking to us just about what it's like to be a military spouse navigating this journey and trying to find purpose and find your own thing in this lifestyle.
Absolutely, thank you so much for having me.